The blessing you've almost stopped believing in may already be closer than you think. Not because you've suddenly become stronger, not because you've mastered every challenge, and not because your struggles have finally earned a reward. Before this message ends, I want to remind you of one powerful truth, a truth once spoken over a boat that was just as empty as yours. Maybe you've been asking yourself the same question for a long time. Does this emptiness mean God has forgotten me? Or perhaps the empty seasons in your life have been serving a purpose you never understood. I know what you've been carrying. I've seen you rise before dawn, filled with hope, only to return feeling like all your effort was wasted. Not the kind of disappointment that disappears after a night's sleep, but the kind that slowly convinces you that nothing will ever change. You've worked with honesty. You've stayed faithful when no one noticed. You've carried responsibilities in silence while everyone assumed you were doing just fine. You've whispered the same prayers countless times until the words became familiar, yet the answers seemed nowhere to be found. The deepest exhaustion inside you isn't physical. It's the weariness that comes from giving your best over and over again while watching your hands come back empty. Maybe you've invested years into work that still hasn't paid off. Maybe you've cared for someone who can no longer appreciate your love. Maybe you're still waiting for someone to return, or wondering why people who choose shortcuts seem to move ahead while you remain where you are. Different lives, different stories, yet the same painful question echoes in every heart. Where did all my effort go? But listen carefully. Not one of those lonely nights happened without God seeing them. He heard every silent prayer, every tear you hid, every moment you questioned whether it was worth trying again. And while you kept counting your failures, God was counting something entirely different. Not the empty nets, but every single time you found the strength to go back out once more. That quiet faithfulness has never gone unnoticed. It matters far more than you realize. You quietly concluded that maybe you simply weren't chosen for better things. Over time, that thought became more than a fear. It became the way you saw yourself. Even when something good happened, you struggled to enjoy it because you expected it to disappear. You waited for failure before success even had a chance to stay. Deep inside, you believed that lasting blessings belonged to everyone else. Maybe you can remember the very first disappointment that planted this belief in your heart. The first time you gave everything you had and still walked away empty-handed. That painful moment taught you to stop expecting too much, believing it was safer not to hope than to be hurt again. But that conclusion was never God's truth. It was simply a wound trying to protect itself. God was present on that very first night of disappointment. He never agreed with the lies your pain whispered to you. While you believed your empty season defined your future, He was patiently waiting for the right moment to reveal a completely different story. Sometimes what feels like the end is only the place where God's greater purpose quietly begins. For a long time, you've learned to hide your emptiness behind a smile. When people ask how you're doing, you give them the answer they expect instead of the truth you're carrying. You speak as if everything is fine, even when your heart feels completely drained. Like someone carrying an empty net folded over their shoulder, you've become skilled at making disappointment look ordinary. But pretending is exhausting. It leaves you surrounded by people who think they know you, while no one truly understands the battles you're fighting inside. Yet there has always been one who never needed your mask. God has seen every hidden tear, every silent disappointment, and every moment you forced yourself to keep going. Slowly, those repeated disappointments taught you something that was never true. They convinced you that a full net means you're blessed, while an empty one means you've somehow been forgotten. Without realizing it, you began measuring your worth by your results. When prayers seemed unanswered, when opportunities never came, when doors stayed closed. Think back to a moment that looked much like the one you're living through now. There was a group of fishermen who had worked through the entire night. They gave everything they had, yet when morning arrived, their nets were still empty. Silence filled the boat because there was nothing left to say. They had done all they knew how to do, and still, nothing had changed. Then, from the shoreline, a voice called out. It wasn't a voice that criticized them. It didn't tell them they had failed or accuse them of not working hard enough. Instead, it gave one simple instruction. Cast your net on the other side of the boat. Notice what changed. They weren't given a new boat. They weren't handed stronger nets. They weren't told to become better fishermen. The only difference was their willingness to trust one word, even after a night of disappointment. The miracle wasn't created by greater effort. It began with simple obedience. The fish had been there all along. The problem wasn't their ability. It was that the right moment hadn't arrived yet. Think back to a moment that looked much like the one you're living through now. There was a group of fishermen who had worked through the entire night. They gave everything they had, yet when morning arrived, their nets were still empty. Silence filled the boat because there was nothing left to say. They had done all they knew how to do, and still, nothing had changed. Then, from the shoreline, a voice called out. It wasn't a voice that criticized them. It didn't tell them they had failed or accuse them of not working hard enough. Instead, it gave one simple instruction. Cast your net on the other side of the boat. Notice what changed. They weren't given a new boat. They weren't handed stronger nets. They weren't told to become better fishermen. The only difference was their willingness to trust one word, even after a night of disappointment. The miracle wasn't created by greater effort. It began with simple obedience. The fish had been there all along. The problem wasn't their ability. It was that the right moment hadn't arrived yet.